Good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Robin Neidorf. I'm the Director of Research for FreePint, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to today's webinar on Big Data in Action, Plain Language Practical Guidance. Really excited to have an opportunity to share with you the insights of the panelists and our producer today. It's a topic that has been very much in the news and in the industry publications, and it's an area that, as I've talked to many of our customers and people who read FreePint on a regular basis, there's a lot of confusion around what these words mean and how do we actually apply the concepts of big data to information work in organizations of all kinds. Before we get into the details of today's session, I just want to run over the agenda and a few housekeeping details. We'll be doing some introductions first so you have a chance to find out who you're learning from. Our panelists will be exchanging some ideas around some of the major themes of big data. And throughout the session, I encourage you to use the questions feature of GoToMeeting to submit a question at any time. You don't need to hold on to your questions until the very end. What I'll be doing as running the software in the back end is monitoring those questions, and then when we get to the Q&A portion at the end of the session, submitting those questions to our panelists so that they have an opportunity to respond. Anything we don't get to during the course of the session itself, we'll make an effort to respond in the follow-up materials. Along with follow-up, you'll be receiving a link to the recorded version of this session, and we'll also be providing a copy of the presentation that we're using today, although since so much of the insight that we'll be getting today is in the actual dialogue that's going to be taking place between the presenters, you'll actually, I think, find that the recorded version is going to be a much better record of what happened during the session than what you'll see in the presentation. But again, as we go, if there's any questions that you have that you'd like to put to the panelists overall or to a specific panelist, please submit it through the questions feature, and I'll make sure to collect those, and we will have about 15 to 20 minutes towards the end to cover those questions. I'd like now to introduce the producer for the series, Big Data in Action, Victor Kamla. We've been working with Victor now since early, I think about in March of 2013, to really take a look at the question of big data, the theme of big data from the perspective of information professionals. What is it that we as info pros can say, think, and do around big data to push our organizations forward? You can see Victor's bio here. He's got a great round of experience in a number of major organizations within the industry. And I'm going to turn it over to Victor now to say a few things about his sort of selections and his work as producer and why he's interested in this topic, and then to go ahead and introduce our panel.
Thanks, Robin. Well, if you look at my background, you get a good feel for why this is very significant to me. My original training was in information science, so I obviously felt a lot of grounding in the information technology. And then I wound up spending many years working in a technology company called, when I last worked for it, Telcordia Technologies, where we spent a lot of time building the networks and worrying about the network side of things. Then I moved over to Thomson Reuters, where suddenly I was now looking at content. So in terms of why big data, I think for one thing it's really become too ubiquitous. It's overly addressed. It's a topic that's burdened with technical jargon. So I think this provides an opportunity to learn from the panel and get some nice questions from the audience and move forward. So I'd like to start off by introducing our panel. I'm going to introduce each member and provide a bit of a background and then ask that person to describe the company they work for. So we'll start with Itamar Ankorion, who is the Vice President of Business Development and Corporate Strategy at Attunity, a provider of data integration and information available software solutions that help organizations make data available where and when it's needed. Itamar is responsible for Attunity's market and product strategy, as well as Attunity's strategic alliances and business partnerships. Prior to this role, Itamar served as head of marketing and product management. Itamar has more than 15 years of experience in marketing, business development, and product management in the enterprise software space. Itamar, would you like to tell us a little bit about Attunity?
Absolutely. And first of all, thank you, Victor, and thanks to our audience for joining us today to learn more about big data. A great and exciting market with a lot of technologies, things that folks can do. As a brief introduction, Attunity is a provider of software solutions that enable organizations to move the data that moves their business. That's the easiest way to think about it. Using Attunity, our customers make data they need available where and when they need it, which can be in different across platforms, across data centers, across technology environments. So we make the data available so they can turn it into value, where a very common area of generating value is in research, reporting, analytics. So simply put, we make the process of moving the data easier, faster, and more affordable. As a company, we're a global NASDAQ-traded company with offices around the world in North America, Europe, Middle East, and Asia Pacific. We've been helping customers for over 20 years with over 2,000 organizations that use various software from our broad portfolio of products. We also partner with other leading vendors in the data storage and analytics space that rely on us as a partner to deliver the data into their software solutions. So our software has been optimized over the years to accelerate, to simplify, to automate the processes of moving data, including both structured database content as well as data that is stored and managed in file systems that is very often semi-structured or unstructured. So today we help organizations move big data so that they can store it and use it. Again, typically for analytics, for research, for business intelligence. And this ability to move the data is a key part of the big data technology stack that is critical to any successful strategic or tactical implementation. We see many customers run into challenges when moving big data that are related to the volumes of the data, the time it takes to set up data movement, and then the related costs. And we refer to those as the big data or the data transfer bottleneck that really gets in the way of turning big data into value. And with Attunity, organizations can remove that bottleneck and make big data available in different types of big data stores, whether it's large data warehouses like Teradata, Greenplum, Exadata, Vertica. It can be Hadoop, or it can be cloud storage like Amazon S3. So wherever you want to analyze and use the data, we can get it there. And we combine unique optimizations to accelerate the movement of data, as well as the process itself to configure and put data movement in place. On top of that, again, we support a broad support for different types of data systems, as well as moving data inside a data center or across data centers as in the cloud. So bottom line is that Attunity helps the IT organization move the data and make it available so business users, analysts, or data scientists can use it. That's the bottom line. Back to you, Victor.
Thanks, Itamar. So it sounds like transport would be an important tag that I'd associate with your services. I'm ready. The next speaker would be Keith Cooper of Connotate. Keith is the CEO, and he brings more than 20 years of experience to Connotate with a proven record of successfully leading innovative technology companies to rapid growth and exceptional value. Recent leadership roles include serving as president of Carbonite, an online backup company, CEO at WebHancer Corporation, a company Cooper led and successfully sold to Microsoft, and CEO of FaxNet, specialist in messaging solutions for large telecom companies that was acquired by Critical Path. Keith is a graduate of the Harvard Business School and Harvard College. Keith serves on the Content Division Board of Directors of the Software and Information Industry Association and is chairman of the Harvard Rugby Alumni Association. So Keith is rugged as well as brilliant. So Keith, why don't you tell us a little bit about Connotate?
Thanks, Victor. Thanks, Robin. So Connotate's vision is to make the Internet your own proprietary database by automating web data extraction and monitoring. So we focus on data outside the firewall on the World Wide Web. About 90% of all new data that's being created today is on the World Wide Web, and much of it's very valuable, containing insights about your company, your competition, your customers, your prospects, lots of opportunity for market research. But about 80% of the data out there is unstructured and very difficult to gather and analyze. And so Connotate was founded to address the need for businesses to gather and analyze web data simply and easily in order to deliver actionable insights for the business. Some of the use cases, and we'll get into one of them in particular a little bit later, are for news and financial information aggregation. We have customers like Thomson Reuters, Associated Press, FactSet that use our technology to automate the data gathering. Market research, things like competitive intelligence, where you want to analyze products and pricing, inventory or job listings of your competitors or your ecosystem, or social media monitoring to look at and track blogs and try to make sense of what's being said. Sales intelligence, which is an increasing application for the technology to monitor new hires at prospective customers or monitor government RFP sites, or even background checks or credentialing, where our technology can go out to the thousands of criminal jurisdiction sites and pull information automatically. So at the end of the day, our job is to get you the data you need when you want it and how you want it to help you do better at your business, whether it's revenues or cost or profits.
Great, thanks a lot, Keith. Moving on, the next speaker is Dr. Phil Hastings of Linguamatics. Dr. Hastings is the Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing based at Linguamatics Cambridge headquarters, and he has over 20 years of experience in the scientific information and software industries. He works for a number of years in commercial and product management roles for scientific, technical, and medical content providers such as John Wiley & Sons and the Thomson Corporation. Prior to joining Linguamatics, Phil spent over 5 years at Accelerus, a leading provider of molecular modeling and informatics software in product marketing and business development roles. Phil holds a PhD from the University of Nottingham. Phil was recruited by Linguamatics in 2004 to take its text mining solutions to the market, and he has overall responsibility for business development, including sales, marketing, and strategic alliances. Phil, why don't you tell us a little bit about Linguamatics?
Yeah, thanks, Victor, and good morning to all the participants, or good afternoon. So, yeah, a bit about Linguamatics. So Linguamatics was founded in 2001. We're based in Cambridge, UK. We have US operations just outside Boston. And what we provide is a flexible, scalable text mining and knowledge discovery platform. And the key for what we do is, I guess, similar to Keith and Connotate, is that we tend to deal with the unstructured world. And we use a number of different techniques, including natural language processing, to do a much deeper dive on the data and interpret the meaning of the data, allow the computer to use grammatical rules to really ask much more sophisticated questions and run more powerful queries over that unstructured data than you would do with a normal search engine. So rather than inputting keywords and retrieving documents, you're running queries that more directly answer your questions. So you're looking for entities or classes of things and relationships between them, and you're identifying those facts and relationships buried in the text. And we also plug in domain knowledge such as ontologies and thesauri so that you can leverage that domain knowledge itself. So the information extracted can be presented in a number of different ways. So typically in a sort of a tabular form, or it might be in some kind of network visualization. But you can think of it almost as the ability to create databases on the fly according to the questions that you want to answer. So the key is delivering actionable information and dramatically improved speed to insight. One of the key things that we were keen to do when we started Linguamatics was to take what was largely an academic and expert domain and make it more accessible to non-experts and to people who regularly needed to search information. So the technology is generic. It's deployed in a wide variety of use cases, but our main focus to date has been on the life sciences and healthcare industries. So we're used by 9 of the top 10 pharmaceutical companies, we're used by the FDA, and we're used by major healthcare organizations. Yeah, I guess that's a summary of Linguamatics.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Phil. Well, I think we definitely have 3 outstanding panelists here today to discuss big data, so let's plunge right into it. This slide, it says, how big is big? And we've had some Q&A with our panelists, and we've definitely concluded that massive amounts of data enable different kinds of analysis, which drive better decisions. So let me start with an open question to the panel. Is the term big data a useful one? Is big useful as a descriptor, or is it misleading? Is it just too simple? Why don't we start with Itamar?
Thank you, Victor. For one, I think that, on my part, I think that the term big is a good term. The reason it is a good term is that it helps to distinguish and call out attention to the fact that dealing with big data is not like dealing with other data. And the issue when we think about whether big is a good term, the issue is not that data is necessarily big. The issue is that it's too big. So when you think about a definition of big data, people have dealt with large amounts of data for many years. But sometimes we actually are at a point in time where the amounts of data, the pace by which new data is created, the pace by which they need to adopt new types of data and new sources of information, we come to a point where traditional technologies, skills, processes can't really scale to address this new amount of information that we're now seeing. So the real issue of big data is it is too big. Again, I think that using the term big is a qualifier is good because it gets people to think differently and not simply assume that they can use the same technology, same approaches that they've used traditionally, and open their mind and understand they need to think differently about how they approach it. As an example, if we look at the volumes of data in terms of how much data needs to be moved, people need to think about moving deltas and not move all the data all the time. Then how do you move deltas? You need to think about it that way. If people need to think about the volume of data feeds that they will need to move, they need to think about how can they set up and support tens, maybe hundreds of new data feeds every year. If it takes a month to set up one, then that will never scale. Same thing regarding to the timeliness of time. So as we talk about the velocity or the availability of timely information, as well as how quickly information gets generated, and how quickly can we set up a new data source so we can use it. All of these aspects of big data are now different than what we've used to see before in the rate in which they're developing and scaling up, and therefore customers need new technology. So in that respect, I think big data is a good term, and people should use it to think about the approaches, the technology that will enable them to scale with big data so they can succeed in turning it into value.
Okay, you mentioned one term, delta. Could you define that a little bit?
Absolutely. We've been helping customers over the years move data from business systems and other systems into their, so they can use it for research, analytics, reporting. And traditionally, people have used what's often called batch processes. They would move the data once a week or once a night, and they would simply copy all the data and make it available. However, copying all the data can't really scale when we're talking about vast amounts of data. So what you need to move is only the changes. So when I talk about deltas, I mean about the ability to keep feeding into your environment where you use the big data, keep feeding only the changes to your data, because you simply cannot move the entire data every time. So you need technology that can identify the deltas or identify the changes in your data and only move those, so you can both move the data more efficiently as well as support the more low latency type of requirements.
Great. Any other comments from the panel on this how big is big question?
This is Keith. So I think, it's sort of relative, and when I used to work at Boston Consulting Group, big data was going out to 50 stores with pads of paper and writing down all the products and pricing until we get kicked out of the store and bringing it back and putting it in an Excel spreadsheet. And today, obviously, you can go right to the web and do all of that analysis, but it needs to be sort of right-sized even then. We work with clients all the time on things like competitive intelligence, and a customer wants to get every price on every product from every competitor to inform their own pricing decisions, and that's a lot of data and a lot of work and quite expensive. And so we try to right-size that. We try to boil it down. Hey, what is it that you really want? It might be a subset of products that you view as most competitive, or the ones where the difference of a buck will make a real difference in the outcome, to your position in the marketplace. And then we narrow it down further, because not every competitor is so sharp in changing those prices regularly to alter the demand and supply patterns. And that might not be 1,000 competitors, it might be 15 or 20. So trying to take that big data availability, boil it down to really try to answer the question at hand is an important part of the process.
All right. Any last thoughts on this topic from Phil?
Yes, Victor, just a couple. So I think the quote from Gartner was the three V's. You've got volume, velocity, and variety. And I think clearly with unstructured data, it's the kind of variety angle as much as anything. So you've got the complexity of the data. For me, it's easy to get hung up about what does big data mean, but I think it's a nice way of keeping everyone on their toes and realizing that they have to work smarter to get the best out of their data. And there's a quote from Clay Shirky that we often use, which it's not information overload, it's filter failure. And I think the key is having the right technology to put the right filters on your data.
Great. All right. Why don't we move along? Vital principles. Well, when we did our Q&A, we found, interestingly, some things we hadn't thought about, and for example, how significant data transport was, which is a skill set Attunity has. And there are many other requirements that the average information pro maybe wouldn't know about, but when you look at it, it's still about sources. So let me ask an open question to the panel. What in your opinion, are the biggest barriers to making more progress faster with big data projects and technology? Who wants to start on that one?
So this is Phil. I'll kick that one off, Victor. So clearly access to content can be an issue. Certainly our experience is that over the years since Linguamatics has been in existence, the number of sources that customers are using and the types of questions that they're answering with our technology has just kept growing and growing. So that's really encouraging to see, and I think it's a clear indication that people are beyond the point of worrying about whether the technology works. They want to know how best to deploy it and on what sources. Clearly, in the news, if you read some of the blogs and if you read Nature, you'll see discussions about publishers providing access to content for text mining purposes. I think the situation is improving there and will continue to improve, and I think things are opening up, certainly in that respect. So it's a question of just finding the right business models, and I think we're certainly winning on that one. I think another important aspect is being able to cross the silos, cross the information silos, whether that's from one unstructured source to another unstructured source, or whether it's combining information that you've extracted and attached semantic meaning to from unstructured information and linking that to another structured data source that you have. And I think that the barriers to that have really come down, and it's possible to do that now, whereas in the past it wasn't.
Any other thoughts on this from the panel?
Sure. Hi, it's Itamar. Just jumping in here, I think that Phil mentioned something very important, which is cross-referencing the information. And this is definitely something we're seeing on our part with customers who want to use big data, where they have the need to cross-reference different data from different sources. So what we're seeing is that traditionally we've been involved a lot with customers who have moved business data into more traditional analytic environments like a data warehouse. We're seeing today more and more the need to move business data as well as machine data like sensors or weblog data, and then possibly augment that with external data, and then mesh all of this together to be able to find new insights and so on. So when we see customers talk about weblog analytics or social media analytics, and they may bring in the data into their big data analytic environment, they still need to cross-reference that when they do analysis with business data that may come from their CRM system, their sales order management systems, and others to get the results that help them run their business better or get the insight. So definitely, as you think about the solutions, customers will need to look at the various types of data sources that they need to bring together. And in doing that, we'll also need, what we're seeing is the need to prioritize them because there's just a lot of them. So we're seeing business and IT coming together to try and figure out what are those priorities for bringing in data sources because there's a lot of them. With that, again, we see a lot the needs, and what we see as a barrier is the time it takes to set up a new feed of data. So you want to run analytics, you want to do research, you want to combine more data sources into that, but it takes you a long time to get the data in. And if you can simplify and accelerate it, then you can do more with your data. So that's we see as one of the big barriers, and the one we focus on helping customers address.
Yeah, and I would just add on top of that, Itamar, is Business 101, which is you got to work really hard at defining the problem you're trying to solve. If you sharpen your requirements, you have a much better chance of getting an answer or a set of answers that you're looking for. If you want to be 10% less expensive than your 5 largest competitors, you know what you have to get from which competitors and how often. That's a very helpful specificity. I want to know when my customers are hiring so I can call on them because they might have new requirements. That question is very specific, and therefore you can get very specific data to answer that question.
Let me ask one last follow-up on this slide. We hear a lot of talk about structured and unstructured data. I'm sure all of the info pros know what structured data is. Can you quickly define what we mean by unstructured data? Bill, why don't you start that one?
Yeah, so unstructured data is, well, not surprisingly, I'm going to say it's basically the opposite of structured data. So structured data tends to be numerical or relatively short text strings in database structure. So it's in fixed fields, well-tagged fields within some kind of database, whereas unstructured data typically is textual data. There's quite a lot of crossover because you find textual fields in databases and so on. And in fact, there is also the term semi-structured data, which is used quite a lot. And even, typical, let's say, patents, documents, or scientific articles, they have structured fields within them. So it might be, for example, authors or affiliations or date fields, which are relatively discrete fields of data within those documents. And of course, if you're working, in the text mining field and you're dealing mainly with unstructured data, you need to still be able to mine those that metadata as well for the semi-structured stuff.
Great. Any?
I would add to that I think a lot of the benefits that people look to find today comes from unstructured data. People have been analyzing structured data for a long time. That said, we see today, when we talk about big data, a lot of new sources of now digital data that is available that are structured, that simply were not used a lot before. These are primarily, for example, sensors. So sensors that measure different sort of information, whether it's for facilities, for RFIDs and others. They generate a lot of data that is typically structured, which means that the way in which the data is organized is predefined, well-known. You can know where to find the information you need within the data. But you have way more of it that you can use. At the same time, unstructured data like text, as we discussed, as well as video, for example, or audio recordings and other types of data that really is unstructured in the sense that the data itself doesn't tell you what's inside it. You need very sophisticated or innovative technologies to be able to identify the relevant data from the unstructured content or the unstructured data. Again, if you get let's say a Twitter feed or some information from social media or video, and you want to be able to identify from within it a piece of information you care about, maybe a customer that is upset with your product, and you look for certain terms inside the text, that is unstructured because you don't know where in the text you will find what you're looking for. So it is no structure. So that's some of the differences between structured and unstructured data. And as was mentioned earlier in the session here, today there's vast amounts of unstructured data being generated, both by machines that record and generate data, as well as by people producing data. We see today consumers produce data everywhere. So that's some more notes about structured and unstructured. And again, you need the technologies that can bring them together and can then analyze them, where definitely the complexity is more on the unstructured data side, and then cross-referencing it with the structured.
Okay. Well, I think it's time to go into the next section here, and this is going to be an interesting few minutes. We're going to have each of our panelists talk about a case study that signifies what they do. So, Itamar, in the interest of time, why don't we jump right into yours?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I thought I know I have just a few minutes here, but I wanted to share a few examples and do that really quickly with folks because we see people doing very different things. One of the examples I wanted to talk about in respect to big data is a very large partner that we work with to offer a solution for monitoring and analyzing data that is collected from vessels across the world's oceans. So we're basically talking about thousands of vessels. Some move, some are stationary at sea. All of them produce data. It's data that is available about their health, as well as information they collect. They need to consolidate all the data so you can then bring it all together, analyze, monitor it in real time, including moving the data over weak networks. So that's one example of data consolidation for one type of market. Yet another similar but different example of moving data, so it's available for analytics, comes from one of our large customers that has one of the leading providers of document management systems in the world. They have printing devices at many organizations worldwide, which they track and monitor online in real time. So all that information gets collected, and then it needs to be moved into their analytic environment so that they can transfer it efficiently and in a timely manner into their data warehouse, that's what they use in this case to be able to improve their business. So by feeding that information from all these devices and moving it in an efficient and timely manner into their analytic environment, they can use the data to meet SLAs, to identify sales opportunities, if there are issues with those, if there's a need to sell more, to manage inventory better because they have information about, for example, replacement parts that may be required for those printers. They can better manage their inventory from an on-demand perspective, and all of that is because they have the data available for that sort of analytics. And then yet another different example I wanted to share has to do with more unstructured or file-based data, which comes from machine-generated data in sensors. So following the hurricane, the Katrina in New Orleans, there's a big dam system that was built and extended around the city, and inside those dams there are sensors that measure the data. That they measure pressure and health and stability and other aspects of the dam. All those information gets collected into files, and in order to use them to generate insight, to understand what's going on, to analyze for an alert, to analyze over time, all these data needs to be brought into the analytic environment in the headquarters, and that is what they use our software for, to automate and accelerate the process of moving all that information into the big data analytics environment. So I just want to take a few minutes here to give you different examples of how complex sometimes data feeds need to be set up, how data may need to be consolidated from many different sources, how you may need to scale up the movement of data, and these are the areas in which we help our customers. In the examples I mentioned, some are in the data center, some are across data centers, and some are over satellite connections. Again, wherever the data is, we can enable to bring it in so that you can have it available and stored for use with your analytic or research tools.
Great. Well, why don't we move on and connotate. The aim is action. Let's hear Keith.
Yeah, so I put together 3 slides and a very quick example, if you could just forward to the next slide. So on the right, embedded in the slide here, is a screenshot from eBay. Okay, it's a very cool site. They do a great job with graphics and organization and search and giving you recommendations as to what you'll buy. It's an awesome website, but it's unstructured. It's totally unstructured. Even though it looks organized, it's very unstructured. So if you are an analyst at a buy-side financial firm that wants to bet on eBay stock and you want to track sales of cameras and TVs and everything else to sell, or if you're a Nikon product manager and you want to see how you relate pricing-wise and position-wise to Kodak and other cameras that are out there, or if you're a market analyst and researcher that wants to track trends in this particular product line, you might want to get the data from this website, prices daily, a full sweep of inventory, look at trends or anomalies. Even though you and I can see this website and we can navigate through and click through, it's very unstructured, so it's very difficult to get those answers. So what Connotate does, if you go to the next slide, with our technology, is we take that data and we turn it into this structured format. Okay, so all that data that you just saw on the page and the next page and the next page and the next page on that website is turned into a database structure that can then be analyzed either by a human being or by a computer. And if you go to the next slide, you can then begin to get insights that would have been impossible for you to see or act on from that website. In this particular case, you know, the camera inventory is going up over time, the average selling price is going down. That's not a good thing. If I'm a stock guy, I'm probably going to sell. If I'm a product manager, depending on which side of this curve I'm on, I'm going to take some set of actions. But you can see from that one page on the website, we turn it into structured format so that you can have actionable insights. A very, very simple example that I think tells the story about what we try to do to enable our customers to better their businesses.
Great. That's a powerful chart there. The last presentation will come from Dr. Phil Hastings on Linguamatics.
Thanks, Victor. Well, I must say I struggled with this one a bit and on deciding which example to pick. I mean, there are lots of different examples. I promise I will pick one. Yeah, so our software is used for mining scientific literature, mining patents, mining electronic patient records, mining social media, and I could spend the whole hour talking about the fun of mining social media, but I won't. I'm going to pick on an example in the pharmaceutical industry, and it's in supporting drug research and providing actionable information extremely rapidly. So just to frame the problem a little, so typically it takes over $1 billion and 10 to 15 years, let's say, to develop a new drug. So I might embarrass myself with the maths here, but roughly speaking, you can think of every day longer that you take or every day that you save is worth a couple of $100,000 to you, something like that. So often what scientists want to do is, if they're looking at new therapies for diseases, they want to have a clear understanding of the landscape around that disease and what genes or proteins are implicated in that disease or set of diseases. So often you're asking really quite complex questions that involve a combination of several entities in some kind of really specific relationship or different kinds of relationships to other entities. So you've got genes on one side of the relationship and diseases on the other side. Now, with our tool, you can basically say, give me any gene. So bear in mind there are something like 25,000 human genes plus all the synonyms associated with them. You put in your node from the thesaurus. You say, give me any relationship, and you say, you put in your class of diseases. And the software will go and mine tens of millions of scientific articles and will extract all the relationships it finds between your target genes and your diseases. And then you have effectively a database that you've just created of assertions, which are extremely much quicker to analyze and to reuse because you've got semantic meaning attached to those entities and the relationships between them. So you can make your decisions straight away, or you can share them with colleagues and reuse them in a sort of knowledge management framework. And that can save massive amounts of time. So feedback we've had is, it can save, and reduce campaigns from weeks to days, months to days. It has a dramatic effect on getting to the right decisions faster, and therefore saving a lot of money and making better decisions.
Okay, well, those are three excellent examples that definitely illuminate our knowledge about this topic. One question that I think keeps coming up, which we want to address, is we talk about projects that succeed and projects that fail. Who, in your opinion, should be the typical representatives in a collaborative team? Who are the people that you generally do see in terms of function, and who might be missing, or who do you think should be added? Who wants to start dealing with that question?
It's Itamar here. I'll be happy to kick it off. So what we see with customers who put together big data projects is that we see actually a team from business and IT. The challenge with doing a big data project in many cases is that you need to bring together a lot of different data sources, and in order to prioritize that and decide what you want to do, you need to figure out what you want to get, what's the most important thing you want to get out of it. And that typically will come either from the business or from data scientists who know what data they need. At the same time, you need data domain experts. So while you may have the scientists who know what data they need, you need the data domain experts that know where the data is coming from. So which sources do you need to go to in order to obtain that data, and what's the best way to go about it? So you have data domain experts that know the sources of data, where data is coming from. You have data integration, people that help in moving the data around and making it available. Then you have analysts or data scientists that basically define requirements and whenever they use the data. Then you may have project managers that would manage the whole process. So if you look at it, you have a lot of people coming together. So first of all, if you ask who is getting involved, this is an example of the different types of folks getting involved. And because of the complexity, they need to work in a very collaborative manner to ensure the success of the project.
That's great. Phil or Keith, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, so this is Phil here. From our experience, we see quite a number of different stakeholders. So it might be heads of research, it might be brand managers, might be a whole range of individuals who have a stake in consuming the information in the best way possible. But the people that really are at the core of that are the information scientists and the informaticians working with their internal customers. And that can be in a number of different ways. So it might be, for example, on ad hoc projects where the information scientist is working closely with an internal customer to deliver a specific set of answers for a specific project. Or it might be more teaching them to fish, if you like. So providing more repeatable, best practice-based self-service options based on repeatable and common questions and common query strategies or repeatable query strategies. And that kind of thing might be delivered via our web services API through a portal, let's say a SharePoint portal, for example. So there's actually a number of different scenarios and often a number of different people involved. But I would say that the information scientists and the informaticians are very much at the center of that.
Great. Keith, do you have any thoughts?
Just to close it out, I mean, there needs to be a really well-defined end goal, and if everybody's bought into that goal, I think the who's around the table is sort of use case dependent, but if everybody's bought into the goal and everybody understands where you're going, it will work out beautifully.
And speaking of where we're going, what do you think lies ahead for big data? What opportunities do we have to improve things?
So again, in our world, we look outside the firewalls, all sorts of extraordinary and very valuable data that can be pulled together from the silos, from internal machine-generated data and customer-generated data, to enhance your understanding of customer profitability and churn and all that stuff. And I'm all about that sort of data. But what we look at is what's proliferating outside and the big data that's happening on websites around the world. And again, it's all about defining what it is you're trying to do as a business and what would be most valuable to you and your executive team, whether it be competitive intelligence or sales intelligence or data aggregation or creating a database that can be valuable for your teams or gaining insights by comparing different data sets from different types of websites. But the use cases are proliferating for valuable data being pulled in from the web. And, again, our aim is to help you automate that, get it into the database that you need so that you can turn it into those actionable insights we've been discussing.
Okay.
If I could,
go ahead, Phil.
is that okay, Victor? I just had a couple of additional comments. So I completely agree with Keith that it's important not to try to boil the ocean. You need to define your use cases. I think there are huge opportunities with big data. There's a huge amount of valuable information buried out there in the big data. You just need the right filters. And a lot of the technologies we're talking about, and I would include ours in this, think of them as a productivity tool, not as a silver bullet. So, don't throw the most difficult problem that you've never been able to solve before at these kinds of tools. Think about it in terms of getting quick wins, go for the low-hanging fruit. You can still get a ton of incremental value from these new approaches.
Great. Well, thank you. I want to turn it over to Robin. I believe there's some questions.
Victor, I want to add one more note. Yep. I want to add another note. That's at least my perspective of if you look at the future. You asked about the future of big data and where big data is going. Well, I think two things are going to happen to big data. It's going to be mature and it's going to become mainstream, but it's going to take time. And what I think is going to happen to big data, very much like e-business. Quite a few years ago we talked about e-business. Today it's just business. At the time it was new. There was E in it. It was all electronic. But today it's business. And I think that big data, maybe 5 or 10 years from now, will be just data. We may have another category of what big data is at that point in time, but what we consider big data today, I think 5, 10 years down the road will be just data. But until we get there, in order to get there, the technologies, the processes, the skill sets are going to have to develop and mature. And as they do, it will become mainstream. And then, maybe we'll not call it big data anymore. It will simply be data. The point is that everybody's going to be using it. And very much like everybody adopted e-commerce and everybody adopted data warehousing, because you have to do it, you have to analyze the data. I think everybody's going to be analyzing bigger and bigger data over the years. And in order to do that, you'll see more innovations, like the companies that are on the panel here today and others that bring to market to help organizations as they try to simplify what today is pretty complex. Try to simplify it, make it easier, and so the technology can help the process, and people will build the skills to use it. So that's what I expect we'll see as big data evolves.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much. Robin, do you have some questions for the panel?
Yes, we've had a number of questions come through, and really appreciate hearing from listeners as we go through these questions. One of the things that I've certainly taken away from the conversation so far is that it's a whole different mindset in thinking about data at this size, and a couple of the questions that have come through reflect that experience I think that some members of the audience are having as well. The first question goes to Itamar, and it has to do with this came through while you were talking about your case studies and examples of how your company works with customers. And the question was, how do you know, how would a customer or potential customer know that they're potentially dealing with a set of data that's large enough to require your type of solution rather than more traditional forms of moving data?
That is a great question. Well, first of all, I think there are two dimensions at least to this. One has to do with how quickly they needed to set up the data feeds. So they need to make the data available, and the question is, how much effort, resources, and cost it takes them to do it. If it takes too long, and typically that's one of the key reasons people come to us, because it simply takes them too long or costs them too much, or they lack skilled resources to get the job done, to build a process that feeds the data. And again, if it takes you too long, if it costs you too much, then we can help. Mm-hmm. The other case has to do more with the nature of the data itself. You simply have a lot of it. You're going to a data source where you have a lot of data, and data changes a lot as well. And you have a need to have updated information available for analytics. And if you have a lot of the data, then many of our customers run into a challenge where they don't have enough time to move the data. And they need more efficient ways to process large amounts of data, or again, they realize they have to process only the changes to the data. And in those cases, that's where we come in and help. So if you need to move big volumes of data, if you need to move data efficiently by moving only deltas, only changes to the data because you need to be efficient or real time, or because you really need to have a better process of moving the data to reduce the time it takes to set it up and the cost associated, that's when we get involved.
Excellent. It's sort of an interesting sort of awareness question, too, that until you know that such a thing as a hammer exists, you might not know what to do with a nail. But now if you're scratching your head wondering how to move data before it becomes out of date, then at least you know that there are solutions out there that you could use to solve that problem. The next question is for Keith, came up during your discussion of an example of how a customer might use your software. The question had to do with whether or not this was a manual process and how long the process takes to move the data from, in this case, the eBay site or any other website into the system and make it into a readable format.
So for the most part, it's a very simple process of going to a website using our user interface and pointing and clicking at the data that you want and telling our software what that is. Click, this is a price. Click, this is a product. Click, this is a description. And once you do that 3 or 4 times, the machine learning and artificial intelligence takes over and populates the rest of that page or the entire set of pages into the exact same format. Once you do that, and that can take anywhere from 15 minutes for a simple site to a couple of hours for a more complex site, then you can schedule the automation to go out and get that data every hour, every day, once a month, however often you so choose, and to tell our technology what format you'd like it delivered in, whether it's CSV or XML or an Excel spreadsheet or via email, as simple as you'd like. So for the most part, if you want to get precise data organized in a very compelling fashion, you go to the website and you point and click at it very, very simply.
And so the actual grab of the data just takes as long as however many points you might have selected to go and collect that. Is that true?
It is, yeah. But again, the machine learning takes over very quickly.
Right,
and
right.
It's quite simple to do large sites in very short periods of time.
Does it have the capability of doing kind of any time there's a change, or do you need to go, does the software need to be set up to say go fetch this data at certain intervals?
Yeah, so good question. We have really powerful change detection technology, so that the technology is going out to the site, it's evaluating it, and anything that changes, whether it's a deletion or an add, is the only thing that can be delivered if you so choose. Yeah.
All right. So the next question came through when Phil was doing his case study, so this was a very handy thing. And it actually, though, relates to a larger question that I'd like to open up to the whole panel after Phil has a chance to discuss it. Phil, you were talking about a very compelling use case about text mining scientific articles. But in a lot of cases, those articles are going to sit in various kinds of published databases or proprietary sites where there may be restrictions on text mining, how somebody could actually collect data, use that data. There's going to be potential copyright restrictions, use case restrictions. How do you counsel customers about that? What are some of the emerging best practices around thinking about that? And then more broadly to the panel, how do we think about proprietary data and what we might be able to do with some of that information?
Yes, thanks, Robin. I think the situation at the moment, so what I should explain, by the way, for the benefit of the participants, is that the platform we provide allows customers to install the software in-house. It's an off-the-shelf platform and plug in whatever content they want, obviously subject to the appropriate rights and permissions. So we tend to see, so taking the case of scientific literature in the life sciences, so everyone is using Medline, which is a database of over 20 million scientific abstracts, and that's basically openly available. What people will then do in addition to that is look at more targeted sets of full-text journal articles, and they tend to have arrangements with the directly with the content providers. My feeling is that area is opening up, and I feel that over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years, it will become a lot more straightforward and a lot more standard to have access to those kinds of articles for text mining. And bear in mind that often this is a case where customers have already bought a license to the content, but the licenses have a clause which restrict text mining. So it's a bit messy at the moment, but I think things are definitely improving.
And throwing that out a little bit further to both Itamar and Keith, I mean, both of you work for companies that would be pulling and using information in a number of different ways. I mean, is that something that you counsel customers on? How do you think about and talk with customers about sort of emerging practices in appropriate uses?
Yeah, so, we have to play by the rules, the legal rules, that is, of copyright and so forth, and, we don't step over that line. If our customers are using our technology on their own premises as opposed to our doing it for them in a hosted environment, that's really their role at that point to play by those rules. That's the legal side of things. There's a whole other side of things, which is, a website saying, hey, you can only come 10 times a day and you can only take 100 things. Or, no robots, period. And, we find that to be not so compelling, frankly. And we're very aggressive on behalf of our customers to get the data that they need, because that's not a legal situation. That's sort of a website preference, if you will.
And Itamar, anything that you would add to that, or does that not come up as much in your practice?
It does not come as much in our practice. I think that, as Keith mentioned, this is mostly the responsibility of the organization that needs to be aware as they're accessing different sorts of data as to the manner by which they can use it. We provide them the means to make that process easier, but as to the legal and other aspects of the data, that's something they need to be aware of as they build their project.
Okay. So that is all the time we have today.
Robin,
yes? Mm-hmm.
Sorry, there's just one quick thing I would add, which is that in the pharmaceutical space, there is actually a body called the Pharma Documentation Ring, which is a kind of loose cooperative of companies that try to work with publishers to sort of bring things forward and make it easier to access content for text mining.
Yes, and certainly in the scientific literature, there's some separate sets of norms that may be applied than in other kinds of business information. We are at the top of the hour, and I do want to thank our panel and Victor for pulling this together. Really useful information. I certainly know that my feeling, having now been looking in depth at big data for about 4 or 5 months, is it's given me a lot of insight about what I don't know and all the questions that we'd have to ask entering into new projects. There are a few more questions coming in, and I do encourage you to continue to submit them either through the interface as long as the webinar session is open, or simply go ahead and email them directly to me. I'll pass them along to our panelists, and we'll try to answer as many of them as possible because this is a huge area that is very misunderstood. In the follow-up materials, as I said, you'll be receiving a link to the recorded version of this session as well as a copy of the presentation, links to all of our panelists' companies in case you'd like to learn a little bit more about the services that they provide. They've certainly been very generous with their time today, and I encourage you to learn more about them. Victor, any final words before we close up for today?
No, I want to thank everyone.